Alright, we're all here ready to hunt some demons. We just need some good one-liners.
Suck it down!
No, not yet. Give that a month.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Fuck off, Featherface!
That'll do. Let's go.
Oh, hang on. I gotta toss my coin first.
What?
What?
Yeah, you know. Heads, we go demon hunting. Tails, I'm not coming. Okay, yeah. Let's go! What?
Please tell me that's not actually from this week's game.
This was originally going to be a requested review. I'd put it on my list, and I thought that the same friend that I had gotten the request to play the original Devil May Cry was going to say, yeah, continue the series. And I was partially right, he did. Except he said, play 3. Skip 2. Just don't play 2 and go straight to 3. Why? Well, it's that bad. Really? When I played through the first game, I didn't understand why the series was so popular. Relatively poor gameplay, awful camera angles, an horrible item system, and animation locks with a demand that you dodge while in animation lock, all circling the drain of writing so bad and trying so hard to be macho and badass that Shadow the Hedgehog is looking at it pityingly. If the second game's even worse, how did this series become as popular as it is? It can't possibly be that bad. No. There it is. I saw it for a split second. Just want to get on top of this pillar. Oh my god. Ah! Yeah, screw this. Oh my god. What? Oh. It's another one that I have to jump in the air for. Shove off. Whoa, away. Am I even damaging it? It's physically underneath me. Oh, there we go. Nope, now I'm back to the one underneath me being the problem. Because I can't touch the orb! There. Can I finally attack it? Why, thank you. You're too kind. How do you get up here? Alright, back to the starfish, I assume. Welcome to Devil May Cry 2, where the story's made up and the fights don't matter. Let me try and explain the story to you. This will be difficult. So Dante is still around from the first game, and he's still hunting demons. I guess. But we meet him invading this old courtyard to meet up with some lady we've never seen before, who we never really get to know her name in this disc. She says that we have to collect the Arcana and heads off. Then Dante heads off. They meet up in a village. Village blows up, but the old lady in the village is okay. I don't know if there was anyone else in the village, but it doesn't appear that way. She's apparently the girl's mother. She has the Arcana, I guess? And she knows about Dante's father, who lived centuries and centuries ago and was a demon. She wants Dante to go do something, and he says he'll help her, and he'll flip a coin. Heads, he'll help. Tails, he won't. So it comes up heads, and Dante heads out. He does whatever it was he was supposed to do, and meets up with old lady again. She says her daughter went off to face against this guy who's definitely not Heihachi from Tekken, doing a weird accent, and wants Dante to save her. Once again, heads he'll help, tails he won't. Coin comes up heads, Dante goes. Brief aside, that boss is the best character in the game. When we meet him the first time, he's just too cool to actually fight us. He summons demons through portals, lounges back on desks, waiting for them to beat us, and occasionally takes a pot shot at us with this awesome-looking pistol. Then when we meet him the second time, his voice is amazing. Easily the funniest thing in the game, which is about all you can take away when your main characters are at best pieces of wood, and at worst wet pieces of cardboard. Aside over, Dante arrives where the girl is being held and gives the main villain all of the Arcana. There is no explanation or reason for this, and he says he doesn't care about that stuff. Well, congrats, you just ended the world unless you kill this guy now. Which of course he doesn't do, and only just escapes with the girl. Somewhere in here is a fight with a giant living helicopter. No, I don't get it, but it lasts so insanely long it must be story important. Now we have to stop the world from ending because, oops, portal's open because Dante gave him the Arcana, so off we go again to break into where he's hiding and fight him again. We win this time because he couldn't attain ultimate power. Why? Well, when Dante threw him the Arcana, he swapped the coin Arcana for his own sexy girl coin that he's been flipping. Apparently, that was magical enough to open a massive demon portal bigger than the Empire State Building, but not magical enough to grant limitless power to the ritual caster. Yeah. So Fight 2 wraps up. Dante's won with probably his only badass line in the whole thing, which is easily pointless since he said the line and then didn't actually kill the guy. He meets the girl standing outside the portal, and she demands he kill her. She was created with demon blood and isn't really her mother's daughter, and Heihachi said she'll turn on the people of the earth one day and kill them, so Dante needs to kill her. Yes, this comes right the hell out of nowhere. Instead of killing her, Dante says someone needs to go in the portal. She offers to go, so he flips the coin he got back. Heads, he goes. Tails, she goes. Once again, the coin comes up heads, and off Dante goes for the final boss fight. He wins, because it's stupidly easy, and takes off through hell on his motorcycle. This is the second one that I was able to just get somewhere it couldn't reach me at all. Am I even hurting it? I can't see the health bar. I was so impressed and intimidated by this boss when I first saw it, and it was like throwing multiple attacks from multiple bosses at the same time, and that was really cool. This, not so much. I feel like I'm beating up some creation somebody made in Spore and was hoping would evolve. that story seemed incoherent and disjointed to you, don't worry. I'm not done yet. There's another disc, and the second disc helps flesh out the story. Instead of Dante, you play as Random Girl and go through the story on her side. This promises to explain everything you are wondering. What on earth are the Arcana? Why did we have to go where we went? How did she get captured? So on. Well, it answers the last one. She got captured by attacking him head-on, winning, and then because he created us, he can magic us against the wall and call backsies on being defeated. The only other pieces of story she reveals is that Dante failed to kill the final boss, so we have to clean up after him. And that Dante's coin is double-sided, as in both sides are heads, so no matter what side it lands on, whatever he says is heads wins. This means he did everything because he wanted to, and flipped the coin to seem aloof and ambiguous. I think this was meant to be a big reveal and make Dante look badass for the first real time in the game, but it just makes him look like a dick who likes toying with people for fun before he actually helps them. What about the instruction manual? Yeah, that used to be the classic way you got your story in gaming. You had to read the instruction manual, and there is indeed, a long section here, like 2 full pages, about the story. So, let me read it to you. In ancient times, a religion arising somewhere east of the Mediterranean Ocean split into many different factions. Its disciples quickly carried it to Western Asia, Europe, and North Africa. As time passed, some gods from the various sects were forgotten, others were assimilated into other religions, and still others were shunned as evil. For one reason or another, the gods all but disappeared. What few people continued worshipping them were branded as heretics. The dissenters were forced to turn their backs on their own homeland in order to continue their beliefs. Venturing farther and farther away, the outcasts eventually found themselves adrift on an unknown land floating on the outskirts of the New World. This was Dummery Island. Hordes of refugees of different races, beliefs, and languages crossed over to the island. The first to arrive followed the sea routes of the old Viking explorers around the North Pole and through the Pacific Ocean. Following them came runaway slaves seeking sanctuary. The newcomers all had one single common point: belief in a pagan religion. Tribes that had historically skirmished over old differences running deep in their cultures now lived together peaceably on the same island. As the generations passed, the former strangers blended together into a single people. Their mix of different languages, ethnic customs, and various gods gave birth to new, totally unique religions. The gods worshipped by the new blend of people were an ancient family of beings inhabiting a different dimension. They wielded strange powers and existed outside concepts of right and wrong. Deities that were considered evil or pagan in the old world were, on Dummery Island, simply thought of as other gods. There were far too many of them to count. Rites performed in honor of these idols often resembled exorcisms and demon-sealing ceremonies. The priests of these cults were known as guardians and were sometimes called upon to protect the gods and their worshippers. Many were the legends of guardians who had borrowed the power of their own gods to defeat enemy gods. One recent tale, only a few hundred years old, told of a great swordsman appearing from the outside to aid in exorcising the most evil god of all time. Over the centuries, Dummery Island's success in supporting the worship of unique religions while maintaining its existence outside of the mainstream has been nothing short of a miracle. Lately, however, agents of international corporations have quietly begun infiltrating the island. Their purpose is to acquire the special ores discovered on the island's interior. On Dummery Island, the people's simple religious piety, as well as the fabulous artifacts buried in the inner mountains, are now in great danger. Ah! Wonderful. That explained absolutely nothing! Why did they bother including that? Well, with the weak story out of the way, we can move on to gameplay. Just get on top of it. Oh my god. Risk of Rain 2 and Starbound are both very fun. I'd much rather be playing those. Oh my god, they're still coming. This game suffers from two main issues. The first is the camera angles. They are awful. Even calling them awful is probably being a little bit too kind. You can't see anything you're doing. You'll rarely actually see the enemies you're facing, and some bosses will fight you at a range from an entirely different side of the room that the camera angle can't ever see. Angles swap suddenly, and things like doorways and interactable objects that don't glow are outright impossible to find. The camera's at its best late in the game when the devs had a great idea. Gentlemen, it has come to my attention that we need to arbitrarily add some length to our game. They can just pass right through the city and go into the demon realm. What can we do to correct this problem?
So, what if we put a bunch of those orbs you have to hit for about a minute to activate, and then put a bunch of enemies around them so we couldn't activate it?
What if we put a timer on it and they had to beat a certain number of enemies before they ran away or whatever?
That's it! We'll put them in a level, hide 4 of those orbs all over the place, and only once they get past those 4 orbs and have found and activated them all, then they go deal with the timer. If it's that much of a problem, what if we just skipped the problematic city level with no real reason to be in it and let them just go straight to the demon world? That's exactly what they did. They hid 4 orbs around the level in the worst spots. One of these I could not find and looked it up. Where was it hiding? On top of a roof. You have to perfectly land your impossible to control jump onto a random pillar, then double jump towards a roof that you still won't be able to properly see because of the camera angle when you make that jump off the wall to get onto the roof, and then finally the camera angle will shift so that you can see the last orb. Even once you're up here, you have to double jump and get your one midair swing to hit it. I couldn't figure out the jump and just flew up there with Devil Trigger, then just kept jumping and slashing one hit at a time forever. The camera leads to the second issue. How could they deal with the awful camera? Well, the first thing they can do is make the lock-on automatic. You will always attack the enemies that are nearest to you, no matter what. So if you wanted to deal with respawning enemies while activating something like an orb that you have to hit with your sword, you can just forget about it. You're going to attack the enemies, and even if you trap yourself between the orb and the enemy, your sword swings won't count on the orb because they're intended for that demon's leathery hide. But a lot of enemies like to fly and hide off screen, so instead, you can shoot them. You can fire bullets as fast as you can mash the button, they do a lot of damage, stun lock enemies, and you don't ever need to see your foe. It was very common for them to spawn some enemies where the camera couldn't see them, but the health bar appearing in the lower corner would tell me they were there, so I just start mashing guns. After a minute or two of mashing and slowly moving towards my target goal, I'd likely never see one of the enemies. They'd all be dead, with their red experience orbs just falling to the ground for me to pick up as I went. Most bosses can be cheesed with the guns too. Oh, except the bosses that can't. The big snake thing can only be hurt with the sword, unlike every other enemy in the game. This is never in any way clear, and I would have been stuck on this boss for an eternity had my stream not told me what I was doing wrong. This boss can also only be defeated by sword swings, but I realized that by complete accident on my second attempt. Even if you want to use the sword like I did, it's clunky and unwieldy. The movements don't make a lot of sense, and once you've started swinging, you're locked into that animation. In a game that requires fast dodging to avoid a quick death, being animation locked at close range is your death certificate. Then there's the head boss fight where you're required to use guns, and I thought my fingers were going to break. At no point was Dante's campaign fun, only coming alive in tiny moments that were outweighed by everything around them. Dante didn't even say anything to most bosses, frankly becoming a silent protagonist outside specific cutscenes. The way forward in each level was always convoluted or unclear, usually due to either camera angles or recycled world elements that left you thinking you'd already been somewhere and wandering around confused. Worst is the final boss. He got me the first time because I was confused about how it worked, but second time through, it couldn't have mattered less. Charge up Devil Trigger against one of the easy ones that can't actually hurt you, then go unload the entire gauge on a tougher enemy, killing it before it can hurt you. Repeat for each side. The real final boss is completely unfair, but using Devil Trigger guns and staying far away leaves it helpless. All of this on top of the item issue carried over from the first game. If you have used one of your items in a boss fight and then died, you are better off resetting the game to the last save point because that item is now gone. If you died and automatically revived with your yellow gem but still died again, well, better do it on only one life now. If you used your green orb to heal thinking you had the fight but then got pinned in a corner, hope you can do it without healing this time. I've never understood why DMC does this asinine mechanic, and I will never not rail on it for punishing the player unnecessarily for not being perfect the first time. My hopes were not high going into the second disc. I really considered just not playing it, but I was determined to see it to the end and keep going, and Stream Chat was pushing me along, so I kept going. Online, it seems like in my research, a lot of people don't like Lucia. That's her name, Lucia. I finally looked it up. But they don't like her and they just say, skip the second disc. You're not missing anything without the second disc. Don't worry about it. I have to say, having played the second disc now, that if you only play Dante's disc, you're really kind of doing yourself a disservice. Lucia is better than Dante in every possible way. Her acting is more believable and better, aside from the random kill me, but you get to see the build up to it now, so even that makes sense now. Her camera angles are better, her enemies are more interesting, or when they're the same, they don't include a lot of the most obnoxious enemies Dante has to face. Her throwing knives are almost as fast as Dante's dual pistols, and they do more damage. She can even double jump in the air and still home in on enemies with her daggers instead of shooting straight down uselessly like Dante does. Her swords are faster, so even if her combo is longer, its travel distance and faster motions make it easier to dodge or stun lock. She builds Devil Trigger much faster than Dante, several times faster, and on top of that, her Devil Trigger is stronger. And I mean significantly stronger. Her guns and trigger not only provide a spread attack, but they home in on the enemy and freeze them for a moment, stopping all animations when you're shooting in that form. Some bosses that Dante would have to shoot for minutes upon minutes can be taken out in 1 or 2 Devil Trigger gauges while they can't even fight back. Her levels feel more like you're accomplishing something as you collect the Arcana, instead of just trying to get somewhere for unspecified reasons. It's clear where to go, and not just because you've played through most of the levels as Dante. Even when you get to swimming levels, the swimming controls are actually really good, and I never felt frustrated by them. Her levels are more concise and to the point instead of having excessive bloat like a lot of Dante's, and the way to move forward is always well signposted in these parts too, so the verticality of swimming levels is actually far better than Dante's vertical tower level while fighting the helicopter. If you actually had to pick a disc to skip, pick Dante's. Lucia's is actually kind of fun and feels like a real game. Still nothing amazing, but fun. But, of course, they still had to include the orb hunt right near the end, and once again I had to look up a location. This time, they hid it in an actual hidden area that required repeated double jumps, and then a blind jump into an area the camera couldn't see. But again, overall much more fun. Despite how miserable this game was, and especially Dante's disc was, there's only so mad I can be with the game developers. As far as I can tell from other people talking to me about it who were paying attention when it happened, and from my own research after the fact, this appears to be, as best as I understand it, the story of this game's creation. Shortly after the success of Devil May Cry 1, Capcom, being the excellent company they were back then, demanded that the game's original director, Hideki Kamiya, make another game. He responded that with the time frame that they were offering to give him, there was just not enough time to make a game like this, and that on top of that, he was currently working on another game and did not have time to split his focus. So instead, Capcom pulled the series away from him and gave it to a development team that remains unknown to this day. We don't know who they are because they did such a bad job on the game that before the end of the project, Capcom pulled all of them off the game. It's almost like the original creator knew best. But by the time Capcom realized that and pulled the inexperienced and incompetent team, they had already announced that the game would be coming out, and the release date was only 5 months away. They pulled in Hideaki Itsuno, known at the time for fighting games like Street Fighter Alpha, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the innovative Power Stone, and the infamous Darkstalkers. In those months, he had to pull the entire game together into something playable. Not only did he get the game as playable as we see it today, but he was working such insane hours with incredible dedication that he was able to add an endgame challenge mode called the Bloody Palace, a mode so popular that it is now in every DMC game that has come after. He then also added a returning character, Trish, as an unlockable choice. The director of the first game, Hideki Kamiya, has actively defended Itsuno, saying that it wasn't his fault the game is in this state. Given the popularity of all the games after this, I have to agree. I think Itsuno did the best he could under the circumstances he was thrust into. Now that does not absolve this game. What it does is means that next time Itsuno and his team are bringing forward a game and I'm playing it, I'll be giving them another chance with open arms. But it does not change what I just played. And that was awful. An obnoxious Dante, poor level design, camera angle that makes it almost unplayable, and bosses that are so pitiful and annoying that they're not even worth the lethargic levels that it took to get to them. Anytime a boss is actually hard, it's by being completely unfair, like the unexplained skeleton with puppers or this moth that needs to get mounted on some nerd's corkboard. Even worse, the story does exist in segments outside the game. For example, this skeleton. He was the right-hand general who fought alongside Dante's father in the demon armies. When he and Sparta fought in the rebellion, Sparta handed him his first ever defeat. Rather than kill him, he instead scarred the demon as an eternal reminder of his failures, and now keeps him alive with hatred to this day. That's a really cool, intricate backstory for the world. It's just a pity it's only available in a later released art book. I don't care if you put in that art book what the Arcana are, what they do, how they were created, and the most interesting misadventure each was ever used in. That's not in the game, and it wasn't around until well after the game. There's effectively no story, and Lucia has actually never appeared in the DMC canon lore until a pre-release comic story before the release of the new Devil May Cry 5, a full 16 years after her game. In the end, no matter how hard Itsuno tried, the second game is really bad and average respectively. If you're setting out to only play Dante's disc, I have to give it a 3 out of 10. The horrible, unplayable camera angles drag it down from the average 5 the gameplay would otherwise leave it at, and several levels with trying to find hidden things, whether that be orbs or an absolutely invisible doorway to progress, are too miserable to allow it to be a 4. I would say it hovers at the top edge of that 3, however, call it a 3.8. On the other hand, Lucia's disc is a 6. It was actually enjoyable and mostly didn't play itself out too long like Dante did to make you sick of her presence. Unlike Dante, she has some personality, but another orb hunt and the camera angles still being really bad in some places keep it from being a 7. Being bundled with Dante, and from everything I read online being the disc that seems to be usually lost, I can't say that helps the rating either. But as the full experience, I cannot consider this game anything higher than a 5. All of Lucia's strengths countered or cut down by Dante's failures. I can agree with the statement at the start of this review. Skip it. This game is perfectly fine to skip. There's nothing that matters inside of it, and the characters really don't come back unless you're hardcore into the DMC lore. Or, if you're a glutton for punishment and want to experience everything like me, skip straight to Disc 2. You'll be a lot happier for it. That was seriously
That
horrible.
was awful.
Alright,
Do it again.
one more of those. Just don't laugh this time. Let them just go straight to the demon world?
You can go straight to the demon world!
You are blatantly talking to the camera. I don't know if you want it like that.
Gentlemen, I don't know my line either. Oh, this is gonna be difficult.
I can't do it looking at him.
To play at points? Play at points. I don't know what points are, but they sound like fun. So stupid.
I mean, pretty par for the course.
Yes, that's why I did it.
You need to like actually pull your shoulders back.
Ah! I legit can't.
Okay, now you actually look like you're wearing a military uniform.